I'm always looking at people. I think people are the most interesting thing in the world. And I'm always
Mm.
wondering what people are doing and what their lives are. This friend of mine, Taylor, she introduced me to this word called Sonder, Sonder. It's the kind of surprise or like experience that you realize that everyone around you has a life as complex as you.
Mm.
Maybe you're walking through the streets of New York and you're like, wow, every single person like who I have a brief interaction with, who I don't even talk to at all, each of them have like a super complex life. I could never understand the multitudes of them.
My name's Ashanti, and welcome to the Taking Off the Mask podcast, where men get real. Men of all ages and backgrounds come to this space to talk about these masks we wear. The front of the mask are the things that we gladly let the world see, and the back of the masks are the thing that we don't talk much about. Jordan, Bowman, good to see you, brother.
Good to see you too, Ashanti.
Welcome to the Taking Off the Mask podcast. I'm so glad to have you.
It's great to be here, and it's been too long. Hope to see you in person soon, but the virtual counts for now.
Hey, I'm glad for the virtual in this moment, and welcome back from a rejuvenating trip. I'm excited to hear more about it. How about before we jump into the masks, how about would you share with folks what you want them to know about you as we jump into this conversation, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so my name is Jordan Bowman. I'm based in Raleigh, North Carolina. I care a lot about creating a world that is rich in connection and compassion. A lot of different ways I do that, but the current iteration that I've really been focused on for the last 7 or 8 years in leadership of an organization called Journeymen Triangle. We're really helping young men forge independence, resiliency, and emotional maturity. We do that through group mentoring circles and through nature-based rites of passage experiences. So giving them an opportunity to connect with mentors of all ages, so that's intergenerational, and then give them space to connect in nature with themselves and each other in new and unique ways. And really, we're articulating what is healthy masculinity. It's been something we've been articulating and kind of exploring for years and bringing more people into the conversation. So I'm excited that you're having conversations like this. You're bringing people in, and our society is really defining what this is. When we put down the mask, what's underneath, right? What's on the other side of that?
I had the opportunity to come to North Carolina for one of your events, and it was a rites of passage weekend. Yeah, and out in nature, a beautiful, beautiful place, beautiful space. Because I was there for like a couple of events, I couldn't stay for the whole thing. But what I experienced in the time I was there with the mentors and the time I was there with the young men was just a beautiful container, a beautiful space that you all were building of men supporting young men in that journey towards boyhood to manhood. And so thank you for the work. And I imagine we're going to get more into it because I think it may be even connected to what's going to happen with our masks, right? As we make our masks together, like what, because maybe you'll explore somewhere in there, like, why did you get into this work? Why did this work call you? Why did this work call you, of all the people that it may have called who didn't answer it? Maybe, that's not a question per se, but it is like, okay, like, why, what brought you to this work? What brought you to this work? So let's do the mask first, because that helps us connect. You and me drop in, and then anything else that's ready to be in the conversation. It's not an interview, so whatever comes up is a conversation that we get to connect deeper.
Sounds good. Let's make a mask.
When you go to places like, so I notice masks everywhere I go, right? That's my thing. Like when I go travel, I'm walking through a little town or a little thing, I see a mask on a wall. I'm like, oh, look at that. Like that's just my thing. Is there a thing that you like look for when you're traveling? Is there a certain like thing you do?
I'm always looking at people. I think people are the most interesting thing in the world. And I'm always
Mm.
wondering what people are doing and what their lives are. This friend of mine, Taylor, she introduced me to this word called Sonder, Sonder. And it's the kind of surprise or like experience that you realize that everyone around you has a life as complex as you.
Mm.
Maybe you're walking through the streets of New York and you're like, wow, every single person like who I have a brief interaction with, who I don't even talk to at all, each of them have like a super complex life that I could never understand the multitudes of them.
Yeah.
Um, it's like it's an amazing experience. It's like, so I think about that often when I'm traveling. I think about what might be these people's lives, how complex, what are their relationships like, what's their day to day like, um, what makes them tick, what brings them joy, where do they play? Yeah,
So is Sonder like a verb? Is it like the act of thinking about that thing, or is Sonder kind of like is it like a more of like a oh, is it a verb? I mean, I'm trying to think. Is it like the thing the doing of that kind of thinking?
I don't know. I think it's a verb
Okay. Okay.
and a noun. It might be both.
Okay. Right
It's an
on.
invented word. I don't think it's like I don't know if it's in the dictionary yet.
Got it. Well, I'm excited. We have a new one because I think I do the same. So I like to have a word for what it is.
Sonder is a noun, and it's the realization that each random passerby is the main character of their own story, living a life just as vivid and complex as your own, while you are just an extra in the background.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. Like the people watchers.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like people. Okay. That's it. That's beautiful. So since you're the guest, you get to go first. You decide you want me to go first. That means I'll share my mask. I'll share the front first, and then you'll share the front. Or do you want to, um, or do you want to go first, where you share the front, and then I'll share mine after that, and then we'll go front, front, and then back, back.
Okay, I'll go first.
You go first. Okay.
So
Fantastic.
I was so anxious to show this. So this is my mask. You can see it. I put more than
Mm,
5 words, but it's interesting. I started with a shape that wasn't a quite perfect circle, so it was a little like different.
yeah.
Um, and I think I'm kind of different as a person. I don't often fit into certain categories or boxes in life or in society. I'm always kind of pushing the edge. Um, and yeah, should I read the words out? Should I explain it more?
Yeah, it'd be great. Yeah. Anything you want to share about those? Yeah.
So I put a big smile because I definitely present like very joyful, and I think a lot of that is it's just who I am. Like it's very true. Um, so joyful, creative, or even like a deep thinker, um, thoughtful, caring, and organized. This is often how I present. So someone who has a buoyant curiosity and who is very joyful and I like to have fun, and I like to think differently. Um, Organization, these little triangles somehow remind me of organization.
Mm.
This dot makes me think of creativity. I don't know why, like right there. Um, but then there's this other side of like, I see things one way in this eye and maybe a different way in this eye. So
Mm.
there's like perceptiveness.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Ooh-wee.
it's the front of my mask.
Thank you. Thank you for naming joy in there. I realize that I normally okay, I'm gonna share this and I'll share with my reflection, but it's resonating a lot and I realized I didn't write it. So I was like, what's happening today? So this is what's on the outside. Dedicated, purpose driven, and determined. And then at the end, when you said joyful, I'm like, oh, I didn't put any light, any like any pleasant feelings or things on here. This is all like work related.
Ah,
It's all
interesting.
like it's all it's all yeah. It's very rigid right here. Like dedicated, purpose driven, determined. Like, are you happy? Are you joy? Yeah, I like joy. I love to laugh. I love to have fun. And I've written fun on the card so many times, and I was like, for some reason I didn't write it. And I think maybe because I'm in that season of like I've been working so much that I'm like that I that I know I need a break, you know?
Yeah, I
And
get
so I'm
that.
like, I'm in that phase of like, oh, my mind is just wrapped around work and get stuff done and get stuff done and get stuff done, and so maybe I'm not enjoying as much as maybe I want to, or I love the work. The benefit of loving the work is that it doesn't
Yeah.
feel like work. But at some point, if you're not careful, it can become a burden, right? The blessing of doing the work that you love is that you do it so much, and then you may not even realize you're hitting burnout, right? And so,
Yes.
yeah, but that's what's happening on the front. That's what I'm showing more of today, and which is actually ringing true with some of the other pieces that may show up on the back. So, uh, yeah, I'll stop there.
I do. Well, I want to pick that up because that's so important. What you just said, the social entrepreneurs, people who are working, service-minded folks, teachers, working with youth. We often forget when we love what we do, we forget about the necessity for work-life balance. I'll use an I statement. I forget,
Mm.
right? I forget the necessity that, okay, even though I love what I do, I need to take a break. I need to take a step away. What do I need to do to fill my cup to experience joy, not just facilitate others experiencing joy? Um, so I appreciate you speaking to that. I think that's really important for folks in our realm or line of work to understand and remember.
And that's so huge. I mean, yeah, I mean it and it's in season. It's that season right now, right? Like it's like you mentioned just coming back from this time of rejuvenation, right? Summertime, and I'm like, I need a rejuvenation, right? So I'm on the other end of it, right? So it's like, oh, like I feel it coming. It's coming. It's 1 week away. It's a week away, right? But this idea of like, oh, I'm carrying the load in a very interesting way right now. I'm treading very lightly to keep it all together because I know that all I want to do is maybe just stop. And I think I almost feel sometimes guilty of saying that I'm tired, that I'm like, how could you be tired of helping the community? How could you be tired of helping, right? Like I think I sometimes I overcompensate towards trying to be so positive on the outside that when things are not, I'm hesitant to like to name them sometimes, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
maybe even address them, not even name them. Like I don't even address them. Like so I'm just boom, boom, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. And at some point, if this is the point, we're at that point. I mean, not at some point. We're at that point.
Thank
We're
you.
at that point. We're at that point. I'm at that point. I am at that point where it's like, you better take a break or you may break, right? And that's not okay. So that's where we are, and that's the front.
One thing you taught me, Ashanti, is always taking the moment to take a breath, right? Like just even in this moment, like just feeling the weight of what you just said. Um, yeah, yeah. Here's to doing more of that because that's what
Yeah,
I need.
yeah, me too, me too.
What I need. So on the back, the things that I don't show people usually um, are I have pretty high standards. I'm pretty judgmental of myself. I'm judgmental of others, but I never show it because I usually lead with kindness and joy, and I want people to express themselves. And so I don't actually speak to those strong opinions or judgments, but they're kind of insidious. They like live right beneath the surface,
Mm,
and they'll eat away at me in the self talk, and they'll erode my relationships if I don't actually speak to them and find a way to compare, like connect, truth and feedback with love, right? Um, some of the other stuff I wrote was, I think I'm pretty good at expressing sadness on the front, but on the back, there's like this deep well of grief. There's like loss. And I don't often speak to or show that deeper grief as often. Um, and the last two I wrote, well, I wrote anger on here. And I feel like I was conditioned growing up that my anger wasn't welcome as a young man.
mm,
Anger is dangerous, right? This is a common theme we hear, but that anger and that capacity to set boundaries and to say like, no, like that's not okay, and to embrace that in a good way is also inhibited because I keep it stifled.
mm.
Yeah, and I wrote, "I want you to like me." I think that's on the back of my mask I've got that
Mm.
desire to be liked, that gets in the way of certain things, of certain goals. Um, it shows up in work, in life, in love, all those places, and I feel like I got a good handle on it, but it's still there, certainly as like a truth that I don't often speak to.
Wow. Thank you for that. And I resonate, and you'll see where. And I actually wrote that one too. I wrote it just now. Actually, I want you to like me. I think that desire started, as a young kid, not feeling super cool or trying, really a good friend. Like I'm a really dedicated friend. You know what I'm saying? Like I believe in helping my friends as much as possible. And I don't know if it was always reciprocated in the same, I think had lots of moments in life of betrayal. I was bullied in middle school, like a lot of like life challenges that came up. But I think deep down, I just want to enjoy. I just want to have fun. Right. But I think the part when you said trained, that was conditioned. And I'll show the other three that are the three that I wrote at first: anger, fear, and analysis paralysis,
Mm,
overthinking.
hmm
Um, and the reason anger popped out on top this time was because I was just listening to someone recently, and I don't know where I heard it from, but this idea that, I'm always trying to, and I think because if I'm not purposely smiling, just the curvature of my lips, they're face down, so I will look like I'm frowning. So because
mm,
I grew up with everybody in a city of people who are always rough and tough, who you looking at like that? Who you mugging? So I'm like, huh? I'm not looking at anybody. Like, why do people think that, right? But because I'm just looking normal. It looks like I'm frowning, but I'm actually just not. I'm not even thinking about maybe anything. So I over push a smile out all the time. Sometimes, I'm at some like social networking events. My cheeks are hurting. Like I'm like, God, my face is hurting, right? Like, they say it's good exercise, right? To smile, like, great, okay, I'm down. But like the fact of like, can I just like not? And then wonder like when I'm not, what are people thinking, right? Like, what story are they making up as they see me interacting where I'm just straight faced, whatever, right? And my straight face doesn't look joyous. My straight face looks pretty. I've inherited my dad's look with the way the lips are shaped, and anger has been held back a lot. So when I feel anger, I'm always also sometimes hesitant to like show it. Definitely in this work with young people. Definitely when young men. We have a program this summer, and I think I've been tested a lot. I've been tested a lot.
hmm
And look, I've always felt for teachers. I was a teacher for 10 years, but I'm not a teacher anymore. So, but leading this program for this 5 weeks, oh boy, I have a huge new. I've always had an appreciation for teachers. My mom was a teacher growing up, but a new appreciation for teachers because what I experienced with these sometimes six, I think it was sometimes seven young men this summer. Oh man, oh my goodness! You talk about like testing your ability to follow my commitment before my ego. My commitment is I want you to learn the lesson from this behavior that you're doing that's acting very immature. I want you to learn the lesson for it. So my value is you learn from it, and not that I have to use words to to put down a force on you, right? To to be dominant, right? Like I'm the adult in the room. I think I've earned the right to be direct and clear,
hmm
but I don't need to like use violence with my words. I don't need to like be harmful with my words. But when you're being violent with your words to me, then I got to be the bigger person. I got to be the adult, the most mature. And sometimes I just want to be my 15-year-old self. I want to match this 15-year-old who's cursing at me. And I'm like, okay, stay cool, Shanti. You're not 15. You're not in danger. You're not worried about getting hurt. Your ego is getting checked in a little bit. Like, what do you want to do? How do I teach the lesson? Now, I've taught the lesson many times where I'm like, who you think you're talking to? Like that's one way of teaching the lesson, being a very direct and clear back to this young man. Like, hey, who do you think you're talking to like that? That's
hmm
that's one way of responding. And sometimes because that part of me is so rough, sometimes I'm like, no, let me come at it with love,
Mm-hmm.
kindness, and gentleness, right? But
Mm-hmm.
inside is it's like the movie Inside Out. Anger is like, let me at him.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
let
Yeah.
me, let me. And so I'm like, oh, I know who wants to come and take over right now. And is that going to be the best lesson for you? Is it going to be the best lesson? Maybe it would feel good to me, but is it the best lesson for you? And I think I know I've been tested on that a lot this summer. So the anger has been keeping behind, and I just take a breath, and I'm like, "Hey, I need you to not talk to me like that. I need you." And I say it in as much of a way as as a lesson can come from it. And sometimes I also know that maybe that young man is looking for a fight. Now I'm not your enemy. I'm not here to You're not here to fight with me. But imagine as young people grow up, they're looking for who can I test out this newfound. I'm becoming a man. So how do I prove that I am really a man? Let me find another man to push up against or challenge. And if you don't have, if not the father at home, if there's no uncles, or then you find the men who are around and you push up against them, right?
Mhm.
You find a part, you find what do you call it? Not an enemy necessarily, but you find a competitor to compete
Yeah.
against.
Yep.
Because the only way you can prove if you're tough. And if I don't say anything, if I let it go, then am I like letting you think that that's how it works? Or so I've been really asking myself a lot of these questions this year. But anyway, that's what's real for me today on the back, and I'll stop there.
I love what you in your story. What I heard was a distinction that you're making as a mentor and as a guide. And the way that we articulate it in Journeyman when I'm training mentors is I say, you want to meet them where they are. You want to meet that young person, that young man where he is. And like you said, he might be pushing and saying, if I push these structures around me, will they fall? Am I really safe here? And he also might be looking for intimacy through conflict, like you were talking about. Like, I want to be close, but the only way I know how to get close is to fight,
Yeah.
is to push, is to prod. And as a mentor, I think our role is to simultaneously, it's the tension of being a mentor that's so complicated. It's meeting them where they are at and calling them higher. So your foot on, at least for me, like my foot as a mentor is on two different planes. So I'm straddling this difference of
Mm.
I want to connect with boy energy. I want to connect with my ability to play. I want to remember what it's like to be a boy, to be a young man. And simultaneously, I'm connected to the world of responsibility, of manhood, of this is how it is. And so I'm
Mm.
calling them higher and meeting them where they're at. And it's this constant lesson and learning and tension that I play with all the time, where it's like, yeah, maybe what he did need in that moment was a little bit of a pushback, or maybe you're getting coaxed into this game that he's playing, right? It's hard to say for sure, but when I imagine myself, how do I have one foot in each plane, and I don't just
Mm.
join them on their level.
Yeah.
I say, hey, come up here, like come higher. Here's
Yeah.
where the men of integrity are. Here's what it means to be honest and to express yourself. And what are you really trying to accomplish? So you're asking them deep questions around what are you trying to get out of this? Has been important. I'm curious how you think about that. If the way I articulated that resonates with you and what you guys are doing.
Yeah, no, I think it's a beautiful way of thinking about it. I think without having the idea that my feet are in two planes, I know that I'm trying to do both, right? As a former teacher, when I was a teacher, I wasn't in a mentoring role. I was like holding a management system, trying to make sure that everybody can reach in and feel safe. And so sometimes it meant if I needed to, for the safety of everyone, put the foot down in the lower realm, then I may
Mm-hmm.
do it. And I may tell you something maybe more harshly. Never with the intent to harm, but always with the intent to show the rest of the room. Because when you're mentoring one on one, is different than when you're mentoring 30 in a room as a
Mm-hmm.
teacher,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's certain things that you have to like decide. How many things am I letting go? How many things am I just gonna roll off my back? And what things am I gonna say no? We would not tolerate this here
Mm-hmm.
ever, right? So I think it's like the layers of it, what you said. But I think what I like, I'm always trying to do that dance, right? Because I know that inside when it was happening, I said to him, I said, "Hey, why are you using violence against me with words? Because I tried to bring him higher. Like, why are you using violent? He's like, I'm not being violent. I'm like, no, you're using violent. You can be violent in lots of ways. Violence is not only physical; it's emotional, it's verbal, it's like you're using words violence with me, right? Because the only way that I can either take it is either I'm going to respond back in similar. Oh, I said, but I'm not cursing at you. I've never cursed at you. Well, I wouldn't care if you did. I'm like, it's easy to say. It's easy to say when it hasn't happened, right? Like, and also like his ego is engaged, right? Because he's looking for this battle. And I'm trying to decide, well, how much am I? Because it's not just one-on-one. It's 6 other young men in the room. So I'm trying to figure out, how am I helping you learn while helping the other ones also learn, and also setting a groundwork that this is not behavior that's tolerated here in this space, right? And not resorting to what teachers do quickly, just kick you out. Oh, you said something I don't like? Get out.
Mm-hmm.
Or you said something
Mm-hmm.
that I felt was disrespectful? Get out. But I want to learn, like, why are you choosing to use those kind of words as opposed to just communicating with me your thoughts or your feelings?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and so I think it's like always, but no, I think I love the visual of like, okay, I'm trying to like meet them. I know what it was like to be dealing with adults who made me mad. I know what it was like. I wanted to curse at them. I just never would have. I mean, it's just, but I can't infuse my value system on him that he should have the same kind of thoughts that, okay, I don't curse at adults because that's just, but I have to be careful not to like project what my expectations are, but I'm also clear about what I'm also not willing to tolerate in a space that I'm trying to build, and so I think so that's one of the things I think about. I think I'm always thinking about that. I think when I met one of the young men in your weekend, it was a beautiful experience of like that edginess, right? Like, and I was there with the other mentor, and they were, and you could just feel him just like, what? Like, just kind of like the side
Mm-hmm.
eye, and then,
Mm-hmm.
why are you asking me to do that? I don't want to go do that. I don't want to do what you're asking me to do. And you're like, yeah, I'm sorry. This is what I need you to do. Just go, please go take care of it. That's the difference, because we're not like in the middle of a concrete jungle in the city in a classroom. We're out in the woods. So part of his thought process had to be like, if I don't do what they say, I am kind of out in the woods. What am I gonna do, right? What am I gonna do if I don't follow along, right? What dangers are out here in these yonder? But so I think sometimes space allows for a little bit more. Maybe I shouldn't get too hot headed in the middle of nowhere that I don't know where I'm at. So I think there's some things about that too. But I think it's beautiful in just being able to say, you know what? I mean, thank you for your pushback. Thank you for your
Mm-hmm.
disagreeing, but I'm gonna need you to just do this, and it'll make sense later. I can't give you all the detail, So how do you just constantly be elevating your own game, right? Because and not go into power mode.
Yeah, because in the classroom, you have to have that authority, that top down authority. It's like, all right, get out. But as a mentor in a group mentoring circle, you're trying to shift the responsibility and the awareness to them. So you're trying to say, what are you trying to accomplish here? And you're trying to get them to think from that perspective of, oh, my words have an impact. That's what I want my young people to understand. My words have an impact, and are they accomplishing the goal that I actually want? Or am I just reacting? Am I just being impulsive and unconscious? And in the group settings in the rites of passage weekend, like in the example you explained, it's we're helping them learn independence. So we're giving them a group dynamic where we give them more responsibility and ownership, and we give them freedom and leeway to start to act out and play out the type of young men they want to be in the world, and to think about how do they embody their values, and that gives them freedom, so they can they can choose whatever they want. We're not prescriptive in that regard. We don't tell them what to think, but we tell them that they should be thinking about this, and then we're playing it out in a group connection where there's an intergenerational community that can help guide and steer, in some ways. And it's like a gentle push towards, yeah, independence, great, but also interdependence. You belong to a tribe, to a village, to a group, to a
That's right.
community, and your actions affect others. So yeah,
That's right.
you can do whatever you want. You don't have to do this, but if you forget to chop the wood and the fire goes out, how are we going to stay warm tonight? Right? you know, there's we're trying to give them more. We're trying to give them more opportunities to be responsible, to experience that. So
As you do this mentoring work, how do you help teach that part when you're trying to give them the best that makes it down the line better for them, but they can't see it because they're so like either like thinking about what their needs are right now. I don't want to do that because I want to be doing something else. And so then how do you help that? Because I think that's something that we can maybe even help educators do better in their classrooms, you know?
yeah, it's a great question. So there's, I mean, in our community, in our kind of community of practice, we have tools for addressing conflict, for making goals and then staying accountable to those goals. And we use these tools to drive home the point that like what you do and say matters. And a man of integrity is one who has his thoughts and words and actions align. And there's opportunities where if someone says something that has an impact on someone else, we give them an opportunity to confront that, to for the person who was impacted to share with the other person,
Mm.
and for them to see that up front and up close. Oftentimes it's on these, it's on the phones, and you're not confronted with the impact of your words, of your, you know whatever it is, if it's a cyberbullying experience or something like that. And we say, no, 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 we're going to do this in the community right here. And we're all going to witness it. And we're going to hold your feet to the fire of really addressing the impact of what your actions are. That's one layer. The other layer is about motivation. And so they might not be motivated to act in the way I want them to act. And my goal is not to get them to act out what I want. My goal is to give them the tools so they can manage their emotional state so people don't control them.
Mm.
When I talk to young people, I say, if you don't manage your emotions, if you don't control your emotions, someone will control you. And that's just the reality. And so how do you learn and get to know this and have some credibility and some buy-in? And they're like, oh, well, maybe Jordan has something important to teach me here. Maybe I should try this thing out.
Mm.
Maybe I should learn to express myself and um, understand my emotions. And um, I can't light a fire under the young people, but I can help them find their fire, and then I can feed it. And that's my
Mm.
goal as a mentor. And that's the kind of process we use in Journeyman. It's how do I connect this to their goals?
Yeah.
I mean, we have to do things we don't want to do all the time. It's like, oh, I don't want to go to school. It's like, well, but you want to have money. You just told me your goal was to be able to have enough money to support your mom and support your family, and you want to have a family. So let's connect this long-term goal that you have with this immediate action. It's a small step towards that. Typically how I approach it.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think, as students are about to go back to school, we're about to hit the beginning of the school year here. And I imagine that teachers, our work is like really trying to support teachers. And I think this next season of our work, we're going to be talking to a lot more teachers, a lot more men in education. How do we create spaces for students in general to be healthy and whole in school? And how do we provide them tips that may need to look more like a mentor and sometimes less like the traditional teacher, right? And I think as a former teacher, I held that as how I try to connect with students on a deeper level. Try to have to be less of that figure, authoritative, like here's the rules, my rules by, and sometimes knowing that I fell into those patterns of being anyway. Even though it wasn't what I wanted or the ideal of myself. But I put some time in the chaos of 20, 30 students at the same time navigating all that. You go to ease, you go to comfort, you go to patterns, and it's like you got to step outside. You got to step outside.
Yeah.
Um, maybe as we close out, and thank you. First of all, thank you for being in the show. I think these conversations. Hopefully, you and I. Though some people come on the show I've never met before, so you and I know. So it's like, well, where do we go next? I think it's really how do we continue the work? How do we continue moving it forward? Right? How do we continue growing it? I know that I think I connected you with a man in your region, a college student who's doing some work, and I'm excited to hear that he connected with you. How do we continue planting seeds, meeting people, making the journey for others, the journey, literally, the journey for others a little easier, you know?
Great question. I mean, you're doing the work, right? Your advocacy for young men or young people, those meetings. I missed the first one. I will be at the second one, but knowing that you're not alone, and that goes for other folks like us. I mean, we're on East Coast, West Coast, right? And then there's plenty, there's dozens, and hopefully there's hundreds of people I don't know yet who are doing this work in their communities. From a teacher's perspective, I would really encourage teachers to think you don't have to do this alone. Like
Yeah.
I say to parents all the time, it takes a village.
That's right.
And I say that same message to teachers that there are men in your community, particularly in our world of working with young men, and there's men in your community who'd be willing to show up as mentors in your classroom, who'd be willing to be community volunteers. Maybe they'd chaperone field trips, etc. And my goal has been to inspire those men to show up and to train them and to connect with the schools, right? And there's someone like me in every town. um, Often, we need a little more voice and resources typically to get it going and support. But yeah, I would say next steps are join a community call like the one you're hosting.
Yeah.
And engage in this conversation. The conversation I've been articulating with people is, what is healthy masculinity? We need to have that conversation as a society. What does that mean? And I'm not saying I have all the answers, but we have a specific take on that. In the last 10 years running this organization, we have a specific perspective on it that I think is worth being heard and shared. But ask yourself, what is it? If you don't have a definition, that's okay, but you probably have a definition of toxic masculinity. And I'd encourage you to invest in growing your definition of healthy masculinity so we can attract and become and create what we want instead of just avoid what we don't want.
Yeah, there we go. That's it. Well, how can folks learn about the work you're doing if somebody on this call has a friend, family member, colleague in the are you call it the tri-counties? It's
the triangle. Yeah. Raleigh,
triangle.
Durham, Chapel Hill. Yeah.
Okay. The triangle, or just want to learn about the work you're doing in general. Like tell them how people can find you, and we'll put all this information in the show notes for sure.
Yeah. And we've got connections all over the South and Southeast, really. So happy to connect people with the right folks. There's programs all over this area. But yeah, journeymantriangle.org. So journeymen, MEN, and then triangle, like the shape.org. You can find us there. And we'd be happy to connect you and share with you what we're doing and what our take is on what is healthy masculinity. We want to hear yours. So open to that conversation for sure. And want to keep supporting the youth, the men of tomorrow, particularly, and really all young people. But yeah, happy to connect with anyone. We're excited to continue our work across the country. If we can do more stuff virtually, Ashanti, always a pleasure. We'll invite you out for the next rites of passage if you're available.
Let's go. Let's make some more masks in the triangle.
That's right. Masks in the triangle.
Masks in the triangle. Well, Brother Jordan, it's so good to be in conversation with you. Thank you for being a part of this conversation. We hope that as you heard Jordan and I share our mask publicly, like you don't have to share yours publicly. Like you can do yours anonymously at millionmask.org. And maybe you find one friend, one person in your life to say, hey, would you be willing to do this activity and share your mask with me? And maybe we could talk about it. I think that helps the conversation. So Jordan, thank you for being in this space with me and having this conversation.
Hey man, being a good neighbor means like taking the mask off, right? Yeah. Showing you who I really am. So
can you show that again? Can you show that mask again?
Yeah, this mask is a mask I created on my rites of passage weekend as a teenager, probably 15 years ago. So
beautiful.
Yeah, and I still have it. It was so meaningful to me. So,
is that made on your face, or is it made with paper mache?
It was a kind of it was a base mask, and then I painted it, and I did a bunch of white intricate details. But this was the Journeymen. It was Boys to Men back there. back then, Boys to Men weekend in 2009.
Oh man.
So yeah, we ask the youth, who wants to be loved for exactly who they are, right? And everyone's like, who wants? Yeah, I do. Everyone does. Well, then you have to show someone, and you have to be in a safe place to take this off.
Who wants to be loved for who they really are?
Yeah,
Fantastic. Well, man, we'll drop in the mic right
yeah. We gotta get going.
because I want to as well. So, thank you, brother. We'll see you soon, folks. Thank you for listening to today's episode. Thank you, Jordan. It's good to see you, brother.
Cheers.
The Taking Off the Mask podcast is produced by Ryan Louie and graphics by Kelly Wong. Guests are managed by Dan Paloma, and the podcast is edited by Samuel Matingo. We'd like to thank everyone who's been a part of the creation of this podcast, and for every guest that has been a part of the show, you are now a part of the Taking Off the Mask family. The Taking Off the Mask podcast is brought to you by the Ever Forward Club, and if you like what you've heard today, please subscribe, write a 5-star review, and share this with someone. We look forward to having more conversations that matter. And please remember, there is more to you than anybody can see by just looking at you.